It's 8:15. Call the meeting to order.
Mhm.
Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry about the noise here.
We'll move to the approval of the agenda. We have one change to the agenda. Instead of having water rights adjudication discussed in executive session, we will have 2 general litigation matters.
Yes.
Are there any other changes?
None from me.
I'll go ahead and move to approve the agenda as indicated.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 12th, 2023. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting, December 19th, 2023, and approval of claims for January 9th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to public comment. Any comment from the public? No. Anybody online? Okay. Seeing nobody online with a hand up, we will move to the general manager's report.
Commissioners, I just wanted to point out that after our next meeting, I'll be on vacation for most of the week and Brian will be covering for me. I'll be largely out of touch. Other than that, I've got a whole bunch of things to talk about, but they all fall under broadband or geothermal or adjudication. So I'll defer that to those broader topics.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to old business. I guess we'll start with the broadband update.
So just as a general overview, we've got, we made comments on the initial proposal for BEAD and we signed on with WPUDA and everybody else for the comments that they had. Later on this week or early next week, we should have what the state submitted. They've already submitted their initial proposal, but we haven't seen it and they haven't released it yet. So everybody's kind of looking for that because we don't know if they internalized all the feedback that was given to them by all the various groups. So we're going to find that out. That being said, we've got our existing projects still in flight up in Point Roberts, and we continue to scan the horizon for any other grant opportunities that are out there at the state and the federal level. And just to assure you guys that we're not dead in the water there. We're still looking. Atul.
So I thought that you had some meeting last week regarding broadband and what our response is going to be based on some preliminary indications from the broadband office. We have no visibility so far? Because I've read in a few publications that they have announced their submission to NTIA.
As of yesterday, I had not seen a copy of it. And at this point, I'll defer to Andrew because he's much closer to some of these details than I am. Andrew?
I'm curious, because I'm going to WPUDA and I'm attending the telecom meeting.
Yeah.
And it's important for me to know, and maybe if we don't know anything today, maybe we can get an email from Andrew tomorrow in prep for the telecom meetings on. So that's as a qualifier. Go ahead, Andrew.
Sure, that's fine. I'm right there with Chris. It may have dropped yesterday, but I haven't seen it as of this morning. But we can certainly send you a follow-up email prior to the telecom meeting. No problem.
Email to the commission so that we're ready for the telecom meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah, and if you don't see it for a little while, we're waiting in case it drops today or tomorrow. But other than that, we haven't seen it, and we'll give you an email to that effect.
Right, and of course, nor will of anybody else by Wednesday. Right. So, I mean, I just want to make sure I'm up to date.
Yeah, and Angela Bennick from Kitsap, I know will present an update on this because she was the one that had the really pithy comments that they should adopt that. And that's why it didn't make sense for a lot of people to submit comments because the comments from Kitsap that
nailed it.
They nailed it, and that was what was in WPUDA's response. Anything else? Oh, Andrew, you want to update us on the latest on Point Roberts, if there's anything?
Sure, Chris, thanks. And good morning, everyone. The update right now is what's a soft update today. Basically, the engineering firm that we selected, they're finalizing the costs to do the engineering, and we're still on track to bring that contract to you at the next commission meeting, which would be, I believe, the January 23rd meeting. So they're still wrapping up and finalizing their final estimates for what it'll cost to complete the engineering piece of this project.
Are there any questions from the commission that we can answer on broadband?
Okay,
Thank you.
want to move to the adjudication update?
Kick it over to John for that.
Okay, I have four kind of topics here. First one, we'll talk about the pending adjudication bills that are introduced in the legislature. And they really come into two separate buckets. One is adding a fifth judge. Real simple bill, both in the House and in the Senate. The Senate hearing on that is today. Here is that bill from the House side. That's adding a fifth judge. It requires legislative action, and the thinking on that has been, well, the volume of this case is going to need a fifth judge. They're all the same. They're all one page. And so, but the minute this is proposed by the administration of the courts, there are other topics that they've been proposing that we've been commenting on and had our prior letter that you've seen that we submitted on that I'll talk about, and that's related to a separate Senate bill 5828. So over the last 2 weeks, I've had a number of discussions with legislative analysts, attorneys for the administration of the courts. What do we think about the fifth judge? I said, listen, our position is we support it. We need that to move this through. And I've had this regular discussions with tribe attorneys on this from Lunny. Do not want to have this judge consumed with the existing backlog in courts and not have their ability to focus on the adjudication, that will have the unintended consequence of delay of process of adjudication, although we realize the meat of the litigation adjudication case won't be happening for a year to 4 years because of the filing of the claim and the filing of evidence. Then they'll start the hearing processes. Tribe attorneys have been aggressively, or not aggressively, have been vocally supportive of that position with me. And I said, I've asked them to be active with their lobbyists on that prioritization, which I'll get to, and process issues. And because I said, we'll advocate for it. We think that's the right thing to do. It's important for the river and the fish. But if the tribes don't get involved, the silence will be deafening on moving the case forward in legislative actions. So this is forward. I was in the back and forth of all the issues, mostly process issues. I've said, listen, we're fully supportive of the court being efficient, funding for electronics and staffing and capital facilities and all the things that are necessary for Whatcom County to have this fifth judge. But when we get to it, we want to have the focus of adjudication. And they asked me if I would testify about this bill and the fifth judge. I spoke with Chris, and I said, yes, confirmed we would. And I said, the hearing is going to be in the middle of this meeting. So I went online last night and on behalf of PUD Editor Pro on that. I am meeting tomorrow morning with the administrator of the courts. She's going to be here for a variety of things, one of which I'll talk about later. So the second bill, and this is probably has more of the controversial elements.
Before,
Sure.
so whose initiative was this, Judge? I know you've talked about a couple of them.
Who's the initiative?
Yeah.
It is being driven by the administrative courts at the request of Whatcom County and others, and ecology largely, because they cannot absorb 10,000 claims to process in an adjudication without having additional staff, additional courtroom space, an additional judge. They want to go to an electronic filing process, which many courts in the state have gone to, which Whatcom County is not. So they need the heavy investment on that. So there's just a whole series of funding that's going to take over a couple of years to get this done. This bill is sponsored locally by Timmons in the House and Shoemaker in the Senate.
Okay. Good.
So, so that's getting the fifth judge. Without the adjudication, this court needs the fifth judge. And that's the problem, is that you'll get the judge and commissioners consumed with everything from guardian ad litem and divorce and temporary restraining hearings, let alone criminal hearings and boundary disputes, when we want the judge the pretext of this additional judges for the adjudication. You want them to focus. So I'll get to how we address that. So this next bill, 5828, has not been set for a hearing. And there's, it at the one level, it seems okay when you look at it because they want to have the Superior Court may appoint water commissioners, a court commissioner to handle this. That's fine. That's in the 9003, the water code, or CW 9003. Talks about what their authority can be in section 2. That's fine. And then section 3 of this bill is the kind of raise the concern. And so our comment was for addressing section 3 of the bill. And then also there is legislation, existing legislation that gives prioritization of certain types of civil cases for scheduling. So for instance, in a condemnation case, if the PUD condemned a right of way, we would take precedence over all other cases in court to have that heard, except for criminal cases. And there are some other things like domestic violence cases, temporary restraining order matters, can all have prioritization. So we said, we proposed language that said prioritize in the water code and kind of adjudication cases. And then we said on this appointment of the, and that purpose of that is to give priority precedence to move that along quickly, not be second, actually back. But the way the court handles things on a civil docket is, okay, we're going to assign cases and they will have 4 or 5 civil cases assigned to start on Monday and 4 or 5 criminal cases ahead of that because the criminal cases take priority. So if all the criminal cases are settled, meaning someone gets plead out or they're not ready to go to trial, then you go to the civil cases. And so they're ranked. So we want to make sure the adjudication hearings, either the judges assign only adjudication cases because they have priority, or the docket has a precedence of adjudication cases. So that's kind of the nuance of how the court administers the hearings. So we're trying to push this. And I've had regular discussions with the Lummi Council on these issues. So that's Lummi, and we had totally agreement on this, the council. So then I've had conversations with Bill Clark on this, and they have a little bit different take on some of these issues. So the prioritization, the courts want to have control over their docket. They want to have efficiency. They don't want to, they want to have control. And I said, okay, that's fine. Why don't we let this be done by local court rule rather than by state statute to give the prioritization of the adjudication cases? And so I heard back, and I had a long chat with someone from the courts last week that really pushed back on that, but their attorney called yesterday, kind of came around to some, with Shannon Hinchcliffe, came around to some language. She sent it to me late last night. I think we'll be able to work with that. I'm going to touch base with the Lummi Council, but it basically says local court rule can establish the prioritization, except for other things that have legislative priorities. I think we can live with that. The issue with, then they want to have a process where no one can object or require consent to the appointment of a referee or commissioner to hear an adjudication case. And that's what section 4, as well as section 3, this, where the problem is in RCW 448 that they seek to amend, allows for the apportionment of costs to the parties. And similarly, it can refer to the right to a jury trial. Aquabella never had a jury determine facts. And so our comment has been, don't open the door. Do not make a legislative change that creates an argument, A, to allocate costs or have a right to a jury trial on fact finding. You want to slow this process up. Just open those doors. And so I think they said, well, they say no one ever raised that issue. And I said, well, okay. This because all the process for adjudication cases has always been an RCW 9003, which is separate. And we can argue that there's no right to a jury's trial granted or created in the water code. But when you, by reference to one section of the statute not requiring consent to a referee, you open the door to the rest, or at least the argument. So we've said close that door. They're working on that language. So this is really nuanced, but I wanted to give you a sense of where we are and what our comments have been. The tribes are completely behind us. Lummi has completely supportive of our position. on the no jury trial, no reference to that statute. I've said we do not, that is not our issue about having consent to a referee. You guys assign a court commissioner, fine. We're not going to argue consent requirements, but we are going to dispute that we have to go to a jury trial for fact finding on our rights because somebody wanted to file an objection and make a demand. And we object to the apportionment of costs. The state's going to have to pay that as ecology, we would, or whoever the party in that particular hearing would be. So that's all what's going on in the legislature right now. And I can give you more if you need it for talking points, but it's kind of happening. The hearing is today on the fifth judge. I think we're going to have resolution on the other language. So that's kind of the background of workings.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I mean, first a comment. This is easy to understand. Fifth judge is easy.
Yeah, the other one is listening.
There's a lot more to it for this one, and I need time to digest. What does the commission need to be doing regarding the second bill?
I don't think you need to be doing anything right now except try to bring yourself.
What's the timeline on the second?
We do not have a hearing set. Right now it's been, I have it up as of this morning. It has been, first reading was yesterday. It's referred to Law and Justice. I think they're working on the language. It's talking to in a conversation tomorrow with someone from the administration of the courts who are the advocate, who are proposing this bill. They're going to be working on the language, so I expect it to morph over the next couple of weeks.
Is Whatcom going to defer to us on this?
I think they probably will totally. I would say that Bill Clark has expressed to me from his egg board clients that they have not been supportive of the prioritization. They have been supportive. They aren't supportive yet of waiver of the no jury trial, but I think they would get there. There was a third issue that we had talked about in our letter, which was a right of an appeal of a court commission decision to a judge, and we've let that go. I think, there were some other court rules, local court rules that we think can handle that. So we decided not to push on that issue and make a concession to the courts to make it easier for them. But so I think what I need the commission to do is be educated, be prepared in case Senator Shumay, Representative Timmons ask you questions, or you're in Olympia, or you see them and they ask you about the position. So you have the information. And I can give you a memo if you need more information.
On this second one, I would like a memo, because we had the legislative reception this week. We'll be having an opportunity to efficiently discuss this bill. So I just think that it would make sense. I mean, you do a really good job with your memos, John. What's most important to me to get is for me to, because you covered it and I was reading and you're talking at the same time, to really get that high level statement again. From your perspective, what is the PUD's priorities as far as this, like, what is it we want to get accomplished with this? So that I can, when I reread this, I can be thinking about what
And I'll tell you what I tell.
the priorities.
Sure. And when I have that question from the AOC administration, the Office of Courts, I say, let me take a step back. My client is concerned, an efficient adjudication process. We recognize the river is at risk, that the egg industries are at risk, that the salmonids are at risk. And all of these are of interest to a wide group of parties in the basin. And the slower this adjudication occurs, the more impact that's going to have. You cannot separate the adjudication process from the conditions of the river and solutions. So we need an expeditious process. So we want one prioritization of this case in the docket. That relates to the fifth judge. That's kind of how it's tied, but it's not really in that bill. Second, we want to have, we don't want to add unnecessary encumbrances on the process. And that is, we've never had jury trials in adjudication. We don't open the door by an unintended consequence of referring to RCW 448. The substance of this, of not requiring a party's consent to an assignment of a court commissioner, fine. The substance we're not don't have a problem with. It's how they are trying to implement this. So I can put that in a one-pager for you.
Could you do that by tomorrow?
I should have that out tomorrow. I may have just cut and paste from some emails that I've had back and forth to the, led to the court's representatives. And why tomorrow it goes into some of my next items. So unless we're done, no more questions.
Are we done talking about legislation? Because there was a
On
foster fix bill.
adjudication.
There is the foster fix bill. Do you think that falls under this topic, a commission?
It can, I don't think it's had any movement yet. I saw some flashes about objections from some groups on the fix, but I don't think there's set for hearing yet.
Have we reviewed it?
I think Sarah Mack has, but I haven't been focused on.
I have not looked at it.
It would just be good to know if it's
Yeah.
on track.
I will find out and let you know by email.
Or John, that's one we could defer to Wapuda. I can just ask Nick
Okay.
where it is. You don't need to chase that. I'll do that since we're out of here.
Okay.
The local bar has set up an adjudication committee of lawyers to look at court rules. I've been put on the committee. Our first meeting is the 17th. We had talked about that before. There'll be 6 to 8 meetings. It's going to have about 20 lawyers on the committee. We've been working on rules for procedure with the Lummi attorneys, had some drafts going forward, back and forth, but the bar and the local court have set up this process. My fear will be death by committee, and we won't really have a lot of outcomes because if I have a bunch of lawyers at the table who all want to have their stake in the ground rather than building the pie ready for the oven. Bad analogies, but we'll see how that goes. In that context, I had a discussion about that yesterday with Tyler Schroeder. And I'm going to be reaching out to the presiding judge, Freeman, just to express our view that they need to set the processes quickly because the solutions in the basin aren't going to occur quickly. And the longer the adjudication takes, the slower it's going to be to implement the solutions. And that's not in anyone's interest. Next, then, Ecology has issued its draft forms for comment. Remember, part of the bill of HB 1792 was Ecology was to circulate their claim forms for the court claim forms to parties for comment for 60 days. They issued those to January 2nd or so. And here is, first one is the short form, which is small use, residential groundwater up to 500 gallons a day. We do not intend to comment on this or really do much of a review because it doesn't really affect the PUD. The court claim form for the full water right, which we would have to prepare, is here. Matt Wells and Sarah are looking at it. I've done a cursory review. Chris has done a cursory review. I think it asks what is required by statute plus some more. So we'll sort out whether we feel it's important to make a comment in this or not. It reads a bit like an interrogatory request for data. I don't know. There's instructions that will come out on the college's website and they'll be sent to parties. This was what will be included in the petition for cert when they start the adjudication for parties to prepare and fill out. Or directions will be to how to find this and obtain it. Or, in a way, it's like filling out a 1040 form or easy versus a 1040 long form, and you need instructions and go to websites and, does Fred and Mabel Jones and, understand it, or they feel they need to see a CPA to fill out their tax forms. And there's no TurboTax to buy. So Ecology is going to be having consultants available to help people. They're going to have online sessions to try to help people fill out the forms. You can take a look at it. If you have any concerns, convey it back. We have till March 2nd to make comments.
From your perspective, what is the PUD's responsibility regarding these two forms?
Do we think they ask more than what we are required to make a valid claim? And is there a risk if they would dismiss the claim if complete information isn't included initially? So do they ask too much that creates the risk that someone doesn't submit a complete claim? To put it another way, is if they ask for more information than what's required by statute, are they creating possibilities for disputes?
How about the linkage between the three of us being elected by citizens of the county? And to some degree, we have a responsibility, or in your opinion, do we have a responsibility for not exposing the citizens of Whatcom County who are on wells to, a appropriate or inappropriate questionnaire and questions that may be appropriate or inappropriate? What do you think about that? Of course, I have my own opinion, which overrides your opinion on the subject, because I'm the one who's elected, but I want your opinion.
I think there's a political consideration versus a legal consideration. I think the district as an entity has no interest in any groundwater well under that's exempt.
Okay.
So from a district perspective, it's not in our lane, so to speak, to be have a concern with the groundwater well in the form. Politically, that you have groundwater users that may be voting, there's certainly an awareness. And so the commission as a district may say, we want to, this may not be in our legal lane for our water rights, but we have awareness of all the folks and we're going to try to be helpful. So that's my response.
I would define it differently. I would say fiduciarily, yes, we don't have a responsibility as commissioners on that. But then, as responsible people representing, citizens, we do.
Yes,
And
we're
that's not a
working
politi-
a similar, it's
Yeah.
a similar.
Okay,
not-
so I just want to be clear about this and make my point to the commission, and that is that, there are aspects of this, so this question has lots of yes and no in it. And, some of these answers can't be answered yes or no, the most important of which is the 500-gallon question. If, a person who has a well doesn't have a meter, which I don't know many well owners who meter their water. Well, Rick, you're an exception. Thank you, please, for that. But you know, meters weren't installed for many wells, you know, if you go back a little bit. So the thing is that how can you possibly know if your daily maximum water use is less than 500 gallons a day? That's one thing that sticks out for me. So I'm just saying is that there are questions that can't be answered in this kind of thing. And when it's a discovery document, what is that, you know, what's the liability of a
Well,
citizen?
and this is the dilemma, is that the statute requires the claimant to set forth what they think their instantaneous quantity has been and what their annual quantity has been. So by statute, you're required to present your claim in that manner. So ecology is drafting a form that's trying to help the small users by giving them questions to guide them. And the in-stream flow rules presently are under the Hearst case, the in-stream flow says, well, we're usually considering 500 gallons a day generally for
For new ones.
new wells, but historic wells under the 5,000 gallons a day limit. What is that? They're trying to give some guidance, and you use your best estimate. You're going to sign this as a submission under court. So arguably it's under penalty of perjury. So you use your best effort to give the best information and make it an estimate. Ecology is going to use these to create their report of finding and do investigations. And but you do have to estimate what your quantity of water use in a QI and a QA, instantaneous quantity, annual quantity. And these questions are designed to try to help somebody walk through.
Do you have links to these two documents? that
I
you
can send you,
share?
that,
Chris?
yes, I have those links and,
Okay.
and I'll just tell you, you have to go to the comment form.
Okay,
And when you get there, then you have to go down to the bottom and it says review documents. But I have those links. I pulled them today for.
I've saved them off as PDFs. I'll send them to you right
well,
after.
I'm interested, or even just the comment form, because I think possibly helpful role that we can play is just to, I think most people don't even know that these are out there. So I can think of a few people that might want to look at them and comment. And that's how long is this comment window?
Till March 2nd.
Till March 2nd,
And-
okay.
In regards to that, I used to, no longer monitor the planning unit. So I think Rebecca keeps on top of the planning unit.
Mhm.
I'd like to know if it's on the agenda to review these forms with the planning unit.
Okay, I'll find out.
Thanks for sending the link around.
I'll do that here when we're done here a little bit. So my last item then,
I have a
Sure,
question about
sure.
the quantity of water use. So they're asking, it seems a little unclear to me, I guess. They're asking for on your highest day. Are you using less than 500? Because they're saying it's a maximum, so they don't want your annual average. Right, that it says not your annual average, so not if you use 400 every day,
Mhm.
but if you use up to 500 on one day. That in my opinion, like that doesn't, like if your water usage is super high in the summer versus super high in the winter, that should matter, right? Like I guess I don't.
well, the issue is under the short form we're talking about
Mhm.
is trying to have a process for the folks under exempt wells. And exempt wells, remember, are 5,000 gallons a day without an annual max, except unless you did the math, 5,000 times 365.
Right,
So they're asking, what's your highest quantity for a single family well? And they're saying they're using 500 as an arbiter. They think they're going to probably try to have a process to streamline folks that would be under the 500 gallons a day to get an adjudicated certificate at 500 gallons a day or less, and move those private well owners that fit into that box through the process quickly. Having said that, I anticipate environmental groups or tribes to challenge a 500 gallons a day, just general assignment to individual wells.
yeah, I would think so. Okay.
So the conclusion that I reached is a little different than John's, and I only closely reviewed the short form. So the way I approached it was, if I had a well, which I don't, would I be able to complete this and find out if I had to use the long form or not? And my conclusion was the vast majority of people are going to have no trouble negotiating that form. And there'll be some where they're like, gosh, I don't know, and it's around the QI, the instantaneous quantity. And, you know, the form to me was very, very clear. If you think you're above 500, you got to use the long form. And my assumption is that most people who use the long form will be aided by professionals, whether they're accountants or attorneys. And very few people are going to try and tackle the long form on their own unless they have that knowledge to begin with. So my perspective was, if the intent was to get all the people who reasonably could submit the short form to simplify the adjudication. Let's say that there's 15,000 claims. If you can get 8,000 or 9,000 of them off the table right up front because they're below 500 and, you know, they fit the short form and all that, I think that would help the process greatly. My opinion was DOE succeeded in that. Now, John and I had a discussion and we disagreed. So,
Okay.
but I just approached it as kind of the naive user and, you know, could I answer this the way that I go after my taxes every year? And yeah, it's pretty complicated and all that, but I managed to muddle through, and I don't
Yeah.
use an accountant.
There's been a lot of debate in our county over that 500 number for decades. And so something that ecology is also trying to do is trying to put a stake in the 500 gallon and have that be the number that won as the number for what is a reasonable amount of a private well owner to be using. And obviously, that's something that I expect, that's not my cross to bear. That's something that I think the planning unit probably will have quite a bit of comments on. And, you know, they're a body that would have some sway on the interpretation of this. So.
So lastly, there's two South CLEs that I've asked to participate in or lead. One is from the local bar association. We've organized that today. It's starts at 1:30. It'll have a presentation on the basics of water rights. Had a local lawyer do that rather than my double teaming everything. We have Robin McPherson speaking from ecology, and we have Monty Mills from the University of Washington, the Native American law professor, to speak about tribal rights and the Winters Doctrine. And then I'm going to wrap up with my presentation that I've kind of done a number of times now on how do you get to settlement and of supply issues and staring into the abyss. And I correlate that to sports collective bargaining. and then a projection of what's happening. And tomorrow, the Building Industry Association had contacted me before the holidays about doing a presentation on water rights and adjudication. So I'm doing one at noon tomorrow on the basics of water rights, and then in what to see in adjudication.
Any further discussion? Thank you, John. Next is the geothermal update.
I got a ton of things on this, lots of little things, but let me start off by saying that, we've kind of recognized that what we're looking for in geothermal is not necessarily what the average PUD is looking for. And so it made sense for us to try and focus our lobbying efforts much more than we could get just through WPUDA or any of the other trade group organizations. So we've contracted with a separate lobbyist, a fellow named Scott Hazelgrove, and he's very tied in down in Olympia. He was recommended to us and we interviewed him and went through a whole negotiation on, rates and commitment and all that. And I think we have a reasonable answer there. So Scott's on board. He's actually working with us now, and I've spent time with him most days last week, and so far every day this week. Although I haven't talked to him today, day is young. Part of what he's doing is he's tracking all the geothermal bills that are out there now, and there are quite a few of them. One of them is going to be heard tomorrow morning, and I believe that is the big geothermal bill.
SB,
6939.
yeah, which the House bill is 2129,
And that's Representative Ramos.
and then Lovewood's the Senate version of it.
And Commissioner Grant is going to be our witness at 8 o'clock. Well, the hearing starts at 8 o'clock. And we have 2 minutes for comment, and Commissioner Grant's going to be our witness on that. And Scott will have gotten us signed up and everything prepped, and that's already early on good service from our lobbyist.
And you already have notes in your email box for your presentation, Commissioner.
And that's the bill that WPUDA is supporting too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
A question. here. So, Nicholas sent an email asking what WPUDA's position should be role. Has anybody responded to Nicholas on that?
Yeah, that is the so it's the thermal,
Yeah, it's the district heating.
Okay, that's a different bill.
yeah, it's a different bill, and
And I would
That's
say
right.
that's one where, as I would recommend, WPUDA be either neutral or positive,
mhm.
but not make a huge investment. I don't think the bill is set up, although I haven't read it in detail. I don't think it's set up to give the district heating or authorization to PUDs. I think it's just that it encourages them to be created. The way the statute's set up today, district heating is not covered by the UTC. So every organization that's set up has to come up with its own governance plan. And that's how I got involved in the one here in Bellingham. So I'm on the regulatory board for that small district heating utility, and what this bill does is encourages creation of more of those.
So it's better to just keep the profile low on there, probably.
I think that's one of those ones where, to the extent that folks think that district heating helps global warming issues overall, which I think it does, it's a good
It's
thing.
an energy efficiency thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm just wondering, he asked if WPUDA should help raise the priority of the bill as far as certainly in their own tracking thing. And maybe it's better not just to keep it
The only thing that I think we might want to think about with that thermal bill, it's confusing because it's geothermal and then thermal, but is that it could help with peak shaving, which would help with reliability, which I know is a big concern for a lot of the PUDs. I don't think, as long as I'm really grateful that WPUDA is supporting this primary geothermal bill. It's not a huge priority for me. I think if it sounds like WPUDA will either stay out of it or be neutral.
Should I just respond? We'd like it that you support the bill
Sure.
and it doesn't need a high priority. As far as attention, unless other PDs also think it's irrelevant. Something like that was a response.
I don't think there's anything bad about the bill.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
this, it's just another way of producing. you
So I'll
know,
respond in the croissant copy.
Yeah,
You, Chris.
That's fine.
um,
The issue, I think, is, you know, Wapuda may want to advocate for that being one of the authorities that's granted to PUDs. I think that kind of operation is outside of the wheelhouse of most PUDs. I know it would be outside of ours.
You know, like I've had a long conversation with George, our previous executive director of Wapuda, about authority. Wapuda's, I mean, a PUD has the ability to do things that it thinks is in the best interest. As a recognizing we're a special purpose, we don't have to get explicit approval for every new thing we do. That according to George. I'm open first, but this kind of thing, energy efficiency, many have argued that PUDs don't need to check in with the, you know, and get special authority to do things like this. Demand management, district heating. I'm just want to be sure.
Yeah, I would defer to John on that. I'm
Yeah,
not sure what the
yeah.
RCW says.
Yeah, my
It's
reaction.
conservative on this.
Well, I think sometimes, I think it probably falls under the general management of your energy systems. I
Mhm.
mean, I think you can read it broadly. These delegation of authorities can be interpreted broadly in certain circumstances.
I'm gonna move the discussion back to geothermal.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
So with regards to geothermal, last week we met with the Nooksack tribe, and yesterday we met with members of Lummi and gave them kind of our geothermal 101 presentation. And in both cases, you know, the answer is, when the question is what, you know, where are you? How far along are you on this? The answer is always, we're right at the very beginning. And in both cases, the tribes are very grateful that we brought them in up front. And that it wasn't here, we've got this completely cooked idea, here's what we want to do, and we need your support for an answer. We're nowhere near that, and they both appreciated it. Yesterday, I think the topic was more focused on the Northwest Indian College and a little bit about what kind of long-term training, and, you know, we need to make a huge investment in the workforce. They recognize that. And it's a long-term investment. That may be a really appropriate way to get a bunch of kids with skills that are needed locally into the workforce. And so it was the very first talk about that. We also talked a little bit about the municipalization effort that the Lummi is looking at. And my sense of what they said is they're preparing a study similar to what our feasibility study was. So they're at that stage of just asking the question, does this in any way make sense, and should we do it? And so I let them know that we would be happy to, you know, help them in any kind of advisory role, and they were appreciative of that. And back on the Nooksack though, the target area, well, the entire south side of Mount Baker, as far as we understand, is in the Nooksack historical tribal areas. And so the discussion with them was a little bit more focused on, you know, what would this look like to you if you wanted to be in the project as a partner, and
or in the driver's seat.
or in the driver's seat. And, you know, so the question for them was much more wide open. And again, they were really happy that we brought this to them up front. And so I don't know if we need to see any more on that, or any questions.
Yeah, I'll comment. I'm talking a lot today.
That's fine.
Sorry about that, but so one thing that I've been exposed to is management of natural resources areas. So in the treaties, there's the aspect, of course, that we focus on a lot, which is water, usual and custom fishing, but there's also hunting. And so both Lummi and Nooksack have a much more difficult relationship as it relates to forestry, forest lands, and the management of those forest lands. And of course, it always comes down to resource. One of the things is that there's really not a physical presence of the Nooksack community on the south side of Mount Baker in any significant way. But there's lots of forestry And it could be that a potential attraction for them would be to have an economic base of activity in forest lands that would allow them to protect and preserve land for usual custom hunting. So I just wanted to bring that up as a potential synergy for them.
That actually piqued my interest just because, so we're talking the south side, does that affect Upper Skagit?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
initially thought it was the Soxiato or Soxuato. And got a hold of Lisa McShane.
Yeah.
She advised us that it was actually Nooksack.
We looked at the
Historical.
Goya, the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs maps, and yeah, I mean. I think it's complicated though, because there's overlap. And so, I think that we'll need to talk to the Upper Skagit and the Soxhawtla too, but I do think that Nooksack was the right place to start.
Mhm. And we did talk to them about historic uses of the land, and that I think if I can characterize the conversation from the Nooksack side, the concern was that there were some areas up there that were used for rights in the past. And they were wondering what the possibility would be of preserving or reserving areas like that. And, I just kind of spitballing, I said, well, typically when you have a FERC license to operate a generating station, that there are amenities that are included in the license. And that would be, definitely FERC would go and talk to you and, what do you want to see here? And because that is the way the process works. And so they were really happy to hear that, and also happy that we hadn't cooked anything, that it was, kind of here's how that process might work and how you can be involved.
Thank you.
I just want to express how much I appreciate the fact the approach was taken on this. I think, obviously the proof is in the pudding. But it's also consistency. I think maintaining consistent updates as we have them on progression of this, and then figuring out what does the team look like as time proceeds will be really important. Because they may want to contribute resources and team to the undertaking. We may apply jointly for funding.
Yeah. And we talked about that yesterday. So we're looking at perhaps a participant steering group. There's all kinds of even overlooking the study. Because at the end of the study, we may conclude there isn't really a resource here, there's no project. But I suspect that it'll go the other way, that there is. How big do you want to go? And that's, so I think it's going to be really important to have everybody that we can identify in up front, and then be mindful of the potential for paralysis. So if you get every stakeholder involved, you got a commission or a committee of 500 people, and then the answer is build nothing anywhere near anybody. And that's not going to be the right answer either.
I think that this is a really good starting point, and I'm really happy about it. And in addition to that, I think that there will be opportunities to to talk to other people too. But what's really important to me now, because we've talked earlier about bringing outside parties into the discussion, but I think it's too early. And I think it's really wonderful that we have this local energy, with the tribes developing this. And I'm not so excited about talking to other bigger energy organizations, other PUDs at this present time, after hearing all of this, because we have our own energy. And part of what's kept projects like this potentially from happening is like a lack of sensitivity and attention to community voices. So I just want to also recognizing the fact that there's this great local energy potential.
So a couple of weeks ago, I met after work with a couple of folks who were just interested third parties, one of whom is a geothermal engineer. He agreed to help us when we go out for an RFP for a pre-feasibility study. And this guy is actually overseeing drilling operations and power plant commissioning in the Salton Sea. So apparently the real thing. We'll definitely do more on that. But that also led to an invitation for me to present to Rotary at the end of this month. So it's the Bellingham Bay Rotary Club. And I think it's January 29th or 30th. I can't remember the date, but it's that, I believe they meet on Thursdays. And next week, I'll be giving our geothermal 101 presentation to the Small Cities Group. So got on the agenda for that late yesterday. And that one could be bumped just because, you know, they're, and I told them there's nothing time sensitive about what we're doing. This is an informational at this point and kind of current thinking. So it could very well be that something comes up around housing or meth or some other issue that the cities need to talk about and it gets bumped off the agenda. But I expect at this point that it'll be on the agenda. And that's a week from today, if I recall.
Is Commissioner Grant, are you attending both of those or
I wasn't planning on it.
would it be okay then if I attend the Rotary? Small Cities I go to occasionally, I monitor it, but Rotary, will you show me the details on that too?
I will. I would just ask that, you know, I'll be making the presentation and let me field the questions.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Yeah,
you know, 'cause
I'm
there'll be
interested in
a
getting
ton of-
feedback, being able to report back on feedback to the community, yeah.
Yep, and I would appreciate hearing how it went from a third party.
Yeah,
As a
okay,
presenter, you have a particular point
I'll
of
be a
view.
note taker then. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much about what's going on, so I'll be glad to be just a note taker.
Well, we're just in a very early stage of kind of daylighting the thought.
Yeah.
And potentially getting the community excited about, oh, maybe this would be a good thing to do. And know that there's an awful lot of questions that need to be answered. And
It's basically the same PowerPoint that was at the Climate Impact
Yeah,
Advisory.
it was a good
Group. Yeah.
and it was a good presentation.
it's just slightly updated from that.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about the possible budget proviso or wait until we hear?
Let's wait until we hear.
Okay.
I was
okay.
hoping to give that as, break this out and have lobbying stuff like what PUD does
Okay.
as it starts to move through.
Got it. Okay.
Barring questions, I'm okay on geothermal. Andrew, I know he's been involved, to say the least, in all of this. Did I miss anything or mischaracterize anything? Both of which can happen.
No, I was going through my notes as well. You did an excellent job. Thanks, Chris.
And one thing that I've said, and I got to say it to you guys, anytime you think I'm doing a good job, it's either Christine or Andrew that's actually doing a good job, and I'm reporting out on their work, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, let's talk about the worksheet.
Okay, that's my ball. So, when we first started the process, there was two consultants we were talking to. One of them I couldn't hear back from, didn't hear back from for contact on the website. The other one was responsive. He when we talked about timing and estimated the kind of resources, had a conversation what kind of time and budget he would need to have to undertake. He felt like he really wasn't up to the task in terms of he just too swamped, but he sounded like a really good candidate for us if we revisit the subject again in a year or so. Then I went and looked for more contacts, and then two more contacts. One I think came via Ann. Thank you for that connection. And then another person named Green Hoyer. He was the executive director of resources. Had two conversations with her. She's willing and able to discuss this further. I wanted to report back to the board first, though, and see if there's a few things that I went over what we had talked about it in our commission, with the key points being that we're focused on our strategic plan and how to establish greater focus and priorities around the strategic plan. And that would be the key outcome of the retreat. It should be commission led. We need a facilitator. That there would be some time that she would need to spend on the consultant will need to spend on understanding our strategic plan before, as far as homework. And then have to have, one-on-one meetings, so a couple hours in that category. One-on-one meetings with each of the commissioners, which would be another couple hours. I explained that probably our staff could help with the logistics and the practical issues of setting up the room, and making the postings and all of that kind of thing. But with Karina, there's an additional responsibility. Karina, she has not, she didn't have prior experience with public agencies. So I wanted to talk to the commission and also mention that I think that it would make sense for her to spend a little time with you, John, and understanding, open meeting, OPMA and other laws.
Public records.
As far as how to conduct because she's open to taking this step, facilitating retreats as it relates to public agencies, but it's something that is not currently, she has not facilitated yet through a public agency. So that's the only potential negative. I guess what I'd like to do is continue, have another follow-up conversation with her. And discuss a little bit more in detail and get a proposal. And also leave open the possibility if there's any other people that anybody in the commission has heard. I also contacted somebody that Deborah Lester told me about, that they weren't available either for the spring. I think we want to do something this spring. So
Did you talk to the consultant who is the mayor of Centralia, who has that consulting practice? They emailed that around. I don't remember.
was that the one that with the website was problematic?
No,
No,
that one I got you. Yeah,
I think, did I forward her contact
I think so.
information to you?
I thought, yeah, and I thought I forwarded it out, but I hit you guys with a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, her name's Kelly Smith Johnson. And I don't know what her firm is called right off I just Googled mayor of Centralia.
If you can
Why don't I send it to you again? I think we talked about this before. I got a recommendation for her. She's facilitated some retreats for similar organizations. Obviously is very familiar with public agencies.
Okay.
And has a background or familiarity with energy issues since she's the mayor of Centralia. So
right.
possibly all downside is that she'd have to travel.
Yeah.
I have confidence in Karina Hoyer as a facilitator,
Okay.
but I would
I've
be
heard great
open.
things about
Yeah.
Karina.
Um,
Yeah.
My one big question here, though, is when we had talked about strategic planning, we didn't just talk about sort of achieving the goals of our strategic plan, but of improving culture at the PUD and how leadership works with staff and that and I don't know if you talked to her about that. That's we talked about bringing in staff into this retreat. So that's a super important factor that should be discussed with whoever facilitates.
But just to be clear, yeah, I have never worked with Karina, but I have heard really good things about her. And if both of you feel good about that, I also think that, and really, I'm glad you brought those points up to kind of circle us back. It might take some time for her to do those interviews with us and with staff and get prepared.
Okay, and
for the spring date.
This is not, I didn't bring up that leadership stuff. I did talk about culture, but I didn't. So here's something I want to respect is the fact that, we are the commission. And of course, the GM responds to us. And so I want to be sensitive to how do we have a constructive and positive impact? And it's a question to the GM who's here. You can answer this question. How can we support you in establishing and developing the culture further as it relates to the strategic plan? What are your thoughts about that and what function a retreat can serve in that regard?
Well, just from a purely generic perspective, the board should always be concerned about policy, and actual execution should be left to staff.
Mhm.
And then I would be the one that you would hold responsible. And I am your only employee.
Mhm.
So with regards to the strategic plan, there's, the commission sets the strategic plan. You get a lot of input from a lot of people, including staff. But, ultimately you set that. The issue for me is, all right, we've got bandwidth to achieve some fraction of what's in the strategic plan in a reasonable window. We can't be everything for everybody all the time. That's beyond our capacity. So how do we routinely set that priority and set it in such a way that it's not set it and forget it, but set it and persist? And that's different. So that it's not, well, okay, I know we agreed to this last time, but now we want you to also chase after this. And there's always a chase after this. And then you end up again outside of the bandwidth of the organization, because at this point, if you want me to take on something else, we either need to hire somebody, either a consultant or a regular employee, or stop doing something that we're already doing. So if everything's been prioritized properly, and I tell you, okay, we're about full up. And then the issue becomes, all right, when we revisit the strategic plan, how do we iterate that? How do we, have a strategic plan? And I would suggest that you can have a short-term, midterm, and long-term goals in a strategic plan and prioritize it that way. And that's just an iterative learning as you go through preparing strategic plans.
So let me summarize a little bit where we're at right now in this conversation. There's no disagreement about what we're doing as an organization should be driven by the commission. And even the priorities of what. We're all in agreement on that. Where there might be some opportunity for kind of finding new opportunities for this commission to be involved, different from the history of the PUD, is to get a little bit more into the how we do all the things we want to do. And that's not exactly the commission. It's not at all the same thing as, I would say, actually, as the commission directing staff. It's about, and that's where culture comes in. And so I just wanted to preface that, but how do we go? You're right. I'm interested in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I wanted to explore sort of how we as a commission interact with each other, how we interact with staff, how we interact with community, exploring like healthy pathways for discussion and communication, and how we effectively like combine all of those components to lead best. Like this would not be, in my mind, and I could have read the room wrong. In my mind, this was less about strategizing. I think most of us here are already pretty well versed in strategizing and in working a strategic plan. So I didn't want to spend hours working on how to, keep our strategic plan moving forward, because I think we're already fairly effective at that. But how we improve working as a team and working as a team will effectually help us move our strategic plan forward. So I guess I was just looking at that role a little differently. And the retreat a little differently. So I'm not saying that we would focus just on how we interact with staff, because there's very limited ways that we can interact with staff. And just to give an example, at January 2nd, my organization had a board retreat, and it wasn't about strategy at all. It was about dreaming about our goals for the coming year. We played with horses, did team leading exercises, learned more about each other's values, that sort of thing. I don't know if anybody's interested in that.
I think that would be really helpful. I would also just say, as a commissioner that started during COVID and had everything on Zoom for the first year and a half, I think some of that connection and kind of learning about, like you said, our where we're coming from, how we best communicate with each other would be useful. And what I've heard too is that as leadership teams do those exercises, strategic pathways then become crystal clear. And you can write a new strategic plan very quickly. When you're not communicating well, or you're butting heads, or you're frustrated, it's much harder to come up with the strategic direction you're headed in.
Okay, I mean, that's very helpful for me. What I've written down is culture, teamwork, and how we improve it.
Think, shooting from the hip here, I would be comfortable if we all feel like Karina's a good fit, we could also bring her on and she could have an initial conversation with the four of us to kind of see what we each want out of it, and then she could write a scope of work that we can all react to.
Okay.
I mean, when I worked as a consultant, you usually put some business development hours in, so if she's willing to kind of have a quick call with all four of
We
us,
could do it would be a special meeting, but yeah, we could.
or
do
she
them.
could do them in one-on-one if she wanted to. Yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
she could also watch this recording.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll get the timestamps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the Wapuda Day on the Hill planning discussion. February 14th.
Another fun Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. I'm actually excited about this because I am on the communications and government relations committee, and of course it was my first year this last year, so I didn't feel super connected to what was going on there, and I felt kind of sad about that. I know you did coffee service, right, in the morning?
I
and-
did, but I wasn't very passionate about any of the bills, so I think this is a unique opportunity, because we have, between adjudication and geothermal, we have some, Whatcom County bills that I think really matter to the three of us,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, okay. So do we, is anybody leading this discussion?
I think you requested to have it on there, so we put it on.
Okay, so I mean, I would love, we're all going to get communication on what this looks like from Wapuda. But I would love to know if like the three of us are going to be there, if we have any sort of swag that we can, or literature that we can hand out during. Did they do that during coffee service?
Yeah,
I have an idea.
we gave out, we gave stuff out, but, I don't know if we want to think about something that's more Whatcom specific. I know a
Right.
lot of the PUDs have their own stuff too, that they do in addition.
It's Valentine's Day,
Yeah,
so we have the I Love Whatcom logo.
mhm.
We could like make the heart bigger and hand out Valentines to people on the Day of the Hill, like a sticker. We could have a sticker, an I Love Whatcom sticker.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
heavy on the
fun.
heart.
Heavy on the heart.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I could try to draw some.
is that, whose logo is that?
It's owned by the county,
County, yeah.
Oh, it's on that.
and it's been put at permanent public domain.
Oh, okay. I'm really interested, like, that's great. I would love to be able to give something to somebody, but I'm really interested in being able to hand something to, say, a senator or a representative that has key points that we would like to get across also.
Scott could help us.
Yeah, Scott can help us on that.
I do.
The talking points that we came up with for, gosh, it was last October and November. I forwarded that to Scott. He found that really good, and he's distilling it a bit. So that's where the talking points are coming from, where it's gonna ricochet right back to us, but.
Oh, you mean from the 2-pager?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And he thought that was really good. So I think there's some geothermal talking points that we can have ready, like trifold type things. There's kind of things like that. I don't believe we have any stock of swag at all. And
I did find a shirt online that I might buy. It says geothermal energy is so hot right now. And then it has a picture of the layers of the earth. So I might wear that with my blazer
Okay, well, it's, yeah,
Okay.
I'd love that shirt, yeah. Let's find that.
But I'm gonna just buy it myself.
Okay, all right.
It's all about making a splash.
Yeah.
That will
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I'm into that, buying something but so can we, if we can't buy swag, which is fine, can we at least get some like handbills or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Why don't we, I think that sounds great to have Scott help us with some talking points, and I honestly, I think with the Scotty, the coffee service and all that, I think truly people are probably a little overwhelmed in Olympia by how much stuff they get. Although if you wanna do some homemade Valentine's, I won't stop. But yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is really just, getting in front of people and
Yep.
talking to folks.
Yeah, and that really is the purpose of it, is connecting with them. And, you know, you may not know much about Whatcom County, but here's something we're very interested in, and potentially it could help move the dial on climate change. Boom.
yeah, that'd be wonderful, yeah. I think one of the, I felt kind of awkward because I didn't do coffee service, but I did do the lunch, you know, and there was a great audience of people at the lunch. And I, at that point, it was my second month and I just didn't even know what I should be talking about. So great, we can be prepared this time. Or if we are all doing coffee service together, is there any, that's not a problem.
For coffee service. no.
I think number one, it's social.
Okay.
And you're not talking about the business district other than stuff that's already been discussed. and
Sure, okay.
been decided publicly. The other thing is, I know there's an exemption for Waputa meetings. And I don't know if this would cover that or not, but I suspect it would.
Rebecca?
Rebecca, do you have a comment? She's off
You wanna
mute.
just come in? She in her office?
Well, she's at home, yeah, she had an outage this week.
Oh.
She may be talking about our next item of business, which is, James is waiting there.
Oh, she
What-
just muted herself. Yeah.
Is there more discussion on the Waputa Dam Hill?
No, I'm excited as long as we have something to hand out. Oh, if I wanted to buy your t-shirt, how could you?
I'll
get a
send the link to
Yeah,
Chris.
okay.
And then, then anyone can buy it.
Okay.
I might, get one for my kids too, because they come in little sizes, so.
Cute.
Can you
That'd be
bring
so
the
cute.
kids as props?
Possibly.
You know what?
I have to talk to my husband.
Oh, wait, I should bring my kids.
Yeah, bring-
Don't
yeah.
look-
Okay.
Consider.
I think it'll be really fun. I am not 100, I'm gonna really try to make it on the 14th. I'm also going down at the end of January for 3 days for Energy Northwest, but I think I'm gonna make it for February 14th.
I'm for sure gonna make February 14th because that weekend is a festival, dance festival that I go to in Portland, so. It's
Okay.
very convenient to go down to Portland afterwards.
All right, so let's move on to new business.
All right, the first item of new business is the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association presentation, and we have James Vandervoort. James, you're on mute. If you could tell us what's going on.
Yeah, hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Daryl was gonna do the presentation. He was really excited to see you all. I don't know how much he's kept you all in the loop, but he's retired now. It's still it's been a process of retirement for him, and I can't really kick him out and take over yet. Which is helping. He's still doing, I think, 30 hours a week, 25 to 30 hours a week, and just kind of helping myself and Eli in our transition. But he had put together a presentation and was really excited to give it to you all today, and then realized he had double booked himself and came and found me a little bit ago and asked me to do it. So y'all are stuck with me, which I guess is some foreshadowing past the presentation. Let me see if I can share it. This one.
We see it?
Okay. I wonder if I go to actual present. Still see it? All okay? Do you see the notes page or do you see the slide?
We're
We see
good
the
now.
slide.
Everything's good.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, I'm the riparian project manager for Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association. This is a presentation Daryl and I, with a little help from me, put together for the 2023 salmon habitat program. We wanted to kind of open up. There's been transitions, maybe I'm not sure how well versed you all are with like who our people are, but the kind of the way we have the restoration staff running. It used to be Daryl and then people underneath there. But as Daryl transitions out, I'm taking over the riparian aspect for him. Eli DeWitt will be taking over the in-stream aspect. We have a field crew of NC techs, and this is what it looked like for 23. There's been slight staffing changes, but I'll I have pictures of all of them so you can meet them too. There's myself and Eli, the NC field techs. This is who we had as staff last year. Alyssa is the one that left us this past year, and we're looking to replace her in the next few months. So we have Will, Devin, Megan, and Tessa still with us. We also contract with a Washington Conservation Corps crew, which is a program run through Department of Ecology, employing 5 18 to 25-year-old AmeriCorps members and 1 Department of Ecology supervisor. I was the supervisor for the past 10 years and have transitioned out of that. This was my crew last year. And then this year's crew are these fine people: Devin, Bree, Meredith, Liz, Caitlin, and Oliver is the new supervisor. Really stoked to have them to help me out in this transition. And then we'll just kind of cover some of the stuff that your funding has helped us accomplish. So the native plant nursery, we have about 20,000 native plants. They were potted in March and April using volunteers, and as well as the field techs and the WCC crews. We have gone through, I believe, most of our plants that we got from 2022, and then working through the 23 plants right now. I need to put in the order for 24 in the next couple months and kind of get ready. But annually, we cycle through roughly 20,000 potted plants. We also do bare root plantings and plugs and live stakes with the crews, but we found for volunteers, the potted stock is really the most forgiving. And then as far as plants in the ground, we are just short of 33,000 for 2023 at 59 sites. I have a couple more orders that I need to put into the system. So we broke 33,000, I'm sure of that. And then we also perform maintenance on 64 past sites. I don't know how familiar you are with CREP programs and the conservation district, but with that changing this past year, we've also picked up quite a few of their CREP contracts to maintain and help these plantings succeed. One area that we've discovered in the past few years that we've been really putting a lot of effort into is going back to our older sites. Funding for these types of projects really kicks in the first 5 years. There's a lot of funding for plants in the ground and maintenance of those new plants in the ground. And our general practice is plant it year 1, maintain and monitor for 5 years, and then it's kind of walk away. And lately we've been realizing that we need to go back to some of these 10, 15, 20-year-old sites. You can see on the right side, that's one of our field techs, Will, pulling a cage off of a tree, an alder, that it's growing through that cage. If we don't pull these out, it's going to girdle it and the plant won't succeed. Unfortunately, we have to continue caging them because that is a tasty snack for these beavers on these projects. So it's been a process learning how to do that, but this has been a big push for us in the past few years. And we've created a new volunteer program every other week for, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 7 or 8 in the spring, 7 or 8 in the fall. We're looking at how to expand this, but we have up to 10 volunteers coming in, and it takes 1 staff member of mine, 1 WCC crew member, and they go out and work with volunteers to remove cages, remove the blue tubes, get them out of the creek, out of the environment, and either resize the cage or assess and see if we need to do anything. As far as monitoring goes, we have monitored 94 sites in 23. This includes the pre-planting, post-planting, and then our conifer study, which I'll talk about a little more in the next couple slides, I believe. We have performed 6 habitat assessments. So these habitat assessments are generally done with the field techs. We've had some transitions over the past few years, so we're really making sure the field techs understand the protocols and can just go do this. And then they tend to roll through and rotate the AmeriCorps members in and teach them the process so that they're also getting this as a learning experience to take on to their next jobs. You know, in the habitat assessments, we're looking at the quality of stream habitat for salmonid species. It'll help us identify areas that would benefit from restoration. And then we also perform this after project work to see results, which sometimes you don't see in the first couple of years, or, you know, in the case of the flooding, a couple of years ago, we see not the results we want, but those were pretty drastic changes that time. We also performed 7 culvert assessments. You know, that's us sending the field techs out following Fish and Wildlife protocols to assess any culvert or whatever the barrier may be, and just look at how much % passable it is. And those are standards that DFW sets that we kind of base our projects off of. We also performed 19 topographic surveys. Those are done before and after in-stream projects, just to help, you know, before is done to help design, afterwards and even during, we're kind of doing that to make sure we're hitting the right levels, hitting the gradient, and everything's going to work out. A big push this year has been building up our GIS database. You know, we're trying to digitize our project. We're working on different levels of analysis of different projects and how we can maximize efficiency. One of those examples of efficiency is we're switching our monitoring program to using a program through Esri called Survey 123. So instead of the crews going out and writing down all the information on paper, which, you know, tried and true, we were big fans of that, they are filling it in on a Survey 123 like form on a tablet or even on their phones if they need, which then feeds directly back to the computer into an Excel sheet ready for analysis. So it cuts out the writing in the field, bringing it back, typing it into the Excel sheet on their own, and then doing quality control and waiting for someone else to go move it somewhere else for manipulation. So it's really streamlined our monitoring process there. And we're now looking at how can we expand that to some of the other tasks that we do. We're
I'm curious.
building, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So curious, Chris, is there anything that we're doing on the in-stream flow mapping, you know, the LiDAR that might be helpful to NC? Or we're focusing on bigger bodies of water. I mean, bigger, I realize that, but it just occurred to me when I saw the slide, if there's any overlap.
Well, specifically, the GIS LiDAR that we're looking at doing is for the main stem.
Yeah,
And it may be that LiDAR expands out as other people look at these two-dimensional models and say, yeah, we want to do that. I don't know to what extent the databases would be in the public realm and to what extent they would be proprietary to the organization that commissions them. I just don't know.
mhm.
But to the extent that we can make stuff available, it's out there in the public realm, you know, we can look at that.
Right. I would say on like a personal, I think one of you mentioned rabbit holes earlier. I'm a big fan of rabbit holes. I would love to see that data. As far as, you know, project work, we tend to stay on the smaller streams and creeks. Part of that due to liability. The other side of it is due like Nooksack and Lummi Tribe both predominantly work in the river main stems and the forks, where we support them, but it's not our main areas. But yeah, I'll take a look at it. I've got a GIS tech over here doing GIS things, and she loves to look at new LiDAR data. Yep. The other push for our GIS database is how can we map our conifer test species to track them better. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but this map, the picture on the slide here is one of our sites, technically 3 sites, and all the different colored dots are where we have conifer test species. This will help us kind of long-term remember where they are if one of them gets out of control, which I highly doubt, but you know, it's just a way for us to track them and analyze them. The 2 that we started, but we're working on further into 24 would be our priorities map, which is just going to help us look at a larger scale where are there good quality buffers? Where could there be more work? Where are some that there is a buffer, but it needs a little bit of improvement, and just allow us to look at it at somewhat of a county scale, or at least a watershed scale that's more efficient than, you know, me driving to pick up my kids. I'm like, hey, that creek needs some trees. I'm gonna go knock on that door, right? So just trying to streamline some of those things, and then making an outreach map. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of, I think, looking at my project list, there's around 300 project sites. A lot of them are much older than what I remember, and are part of what I'm trying to download from Daryl's brain as he retires. But, you know, trying to put that in a map and put it in a way that we can safely share it with the community without really giving away, you know, this is a homeowner that we worked with, and keeping private details private. But those are the two that I'm pretty excited for. This is the most recent data from our assisted migration monitoring. So I'm not sure if Daryl's ever presented to you all on this before, but back in 2019, we started noticing on our project sites that the Western red cedars were having a hard time surviving, and even at a young age and at an old age, we've seen them around the county starting to die back. And it's, you know, since been studied further. There's been some work from WSU and Oregon that have come out pretty much saying that it's most likely in their mind due to, you know, climate change, warming temperatures in the summer, drought.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure if someone was gonna say something. But so back in 2019, we just had some access to some giant sequoias. I think as a crew lead, Daryl and Eli and I kind of were talking about let's test out some other species. We've got some good sites where we can, you know, easy access if there was ever a need to go back and cull them due to issues. We've got willing homeowners, and it was just kind of a fun science experiment to me at that point, but it's since become a little more emboldened, and we work with Western professors at Western on our habitat committee to really kind of plan this out and monitor it. But we put in these 5 species. So giant sequoia, incense cedar, Alaska yellow cedar, coastal redwoods, and then Western reds as a control at 20 sites. And we go out and monitor them in the spring and in the fall every year. The plan is to do it for 10 years. I think we're in year 5 this year. So at the end, I'm kind of anticipating we'll do some sort of bigger analysis, but I tend to make one of these at every monitoring point. This is the snapshot from fall 23. You know, notable things are the giant sequoias are not doing as well as I kind of predicted they would. I think that's just due to the climate not really, it's a big jump for them. And then incense cedars and Alaska yellow cedars are performing the best, which kind of checks out with what I've heard from other players in the game, and just what I would guess from their native ranges. We've also improved, we purchased a drone, I believe, a couple of years ago, and we're using that to do some of our monitoring protocols. I think the biggest benefit of this, if you look at the picture on the left, that's from 2003. You know, you can imagine that these trees in the 2022 picture, you're not going to see much in the form of scale in that picture from the ground. You're just going to see a wall of trees, which I think still shows something impressive. But now that we can look at this, and you can see, like, especially now we're doing our pre-photos in the air as well, and we're still doing both, but you know, we're trying to get a different perspective, and it really shows a different story when you can zoom up and see this tall tree is not just a wall right here, but it extends this 300, 400 feet. So we're pretty excited about that. We're still learning how to implement that plan the best, but tweaking it and identifying sites that would be good to go back and take new pictures, and we're trying to start it with every new project we do. Just 2024 riparian update. We are pretty excited. There's some new bigger pots of funding from Washington Conservation Commission funding and the Recreation and Conservation Office. We have 16 proposed new projects currently, and that's just like brand new plantings. Many others that we're continuing to plant on, or that we're picking up from other entities to support. There's been a lot of collaboration with the Land Trust, Conservation District, both tribal entities, and Whatcom County as well. And then we have about 109 older projects to monitor, and normally what that entails is some sort of maintenance. And that's it for riparian. Moving on to in-stream. I can answer questions, but forgive me, I'm the riparian manager. So this was a quick conversation between Daryl and Eli and myself before taking over. So 2023 was somewhat of a light year. We had 2 projects that had to get delayed until 2025, but overall 5 culverts were removed and 4 bridges installed, 10 large woody debris structures installed, and this opened up access to 2.4 miles of habitat. I have a couple pictures to show. So this is one of them, Starry Creek. If you look in the top right, it's kind of hard to see, but there's actually 2 driveways there, and that fence line is kind of a split in the middle. The top left is what the culvert used to look like. And I can't remember what the passability was, but it wasn't great. That thing, once water came up, it was pretty flooded, right? You can tell it's not a great culvert. And then the 2 bottom pictures are what it looks like now. So you can see, the drone pictures help give it that added level. It just makes a different picture. You can kind of see the scope of the whole project better. And then you can see in the bottom left, that fence line's still there. So that's kind of your guide on what it used to be. One of these roads was completely removed and they share a driveway now. And then bottom right is bridge with the water flowing. I haven't been back out. I mean, these ones are kind of cool to me. Where I come back in is this one now upstream has a couple 100 feet of planting that the homeowner is going to let us plant along the creek. So you can see in the top left, it was all weeds and really clogging up the culvert. Now in the bottom right, there's open flow and we get access to putting more trees and better habitat. The second project Daryl wanted to highlight was a large woody debris project that was installed. I believe that's near Linden Christian High School. That's what it looks like to me on Fish Trap. Top 2 of the erosion that came in the past year or so and just really exacerbated it. I think one of the initial plans was to do some armoring with rock, and Daryl was able to work with them and put in large woody debris and erosion fabric. This will get planted just like the other areas that we disturb in these projects, and hopefully rehab, and we'll monitor it for the next few years to see what comes of it. And then this is the list for 2024. You can see there's just over 1,300 feet of projects, 27 large wooded debris structures, and access to up to 10 miles of upstream habitat. I can write down questions on these ones, but I haven't seen much from these new projects. But that's all we had put together for you. If there's time, I can take any questions, or I can write them down and get them to Daryl, Eli, and we can get back to you on it.
I think Atul has a question.
Yeah, I was curious, a lot of residents in Everson experienced a lot of adversity over the Mount Baker Highway closure. Of course, NC wasn't involved in that, but
Right.
and many residents raised concern that, oh, this is not worth it. It was a big hassle to lose our access to getting into town, into Bellingham. What's your positive story on what that the culvert replacement did in terms of salmon habitat?
Yeah, I mean, my take on it, and I've gotten this a lot this summer. There have been many people that are like, "Oh, Nooksack Salmon, so you're the ones doing that big culvert." I was like, no, that's not us. But I mean, from a salmon point of view, I support it. WashDOT and Whatcom County and everyone doing those bigger projects are partners of ours. So I don't want to talk negatively about any of the projects. That project was so big, I can't even imagine the scope of it compared to what we're doing. Our bridges are expensive and some of them are large bridges to me, but the amount of work that goes into that one and just having to deal with the community in that sense blows my mind. So I think it's an impressive project. I do acknowledge that there was a large disturbance to many people in their daily life. And I think that's I've had to deal with those things as well. But in my mind, the benefit to salmon was large. Are there areas that personally I would prioritize over that project? Maybe, but I think it's a really cool one because Whatcom Creek is its own watershed, and that's the last main barrier that had it was a full barrier, right? That's the last one, and I would love to see all of our projects that we did upstream. I think we've got at least 3 or 4 barriers that we removed upstream of that, and we have the last property on the way to the lake right now is bare and open. And I just met with the homeowner of that the other day to get him in a conservation district program, and hopefully we can put a 50-foot buffer on either side of the creek, all the way from the last like tree stand to the lake. And so the potential for us as a community to say like, yeah, this one watershed that had all these issues, goes through urban, goes through agriculture, has full riparian buffer and great coverage, great habitat for salmon species, I think is a win for the community. So I at this point it's late, but I'm pro for the project. I appreciate that it was done, but I think it does come with the acknowledgement that, like, yeah, that was a hindrance to many people.
Yeah, okay. And then, so you actually had done stuff upstream of that. Recognizing that that was gonna be cleared.
Yeah, I think there are times that, you know, if we can find funding for that project, our hope would be that if we do that, it, you know, the projects are prioritized by how much of a benefit they provide. Our smaller projects are easy to fund. That bigger project, knowing what how it's going to affect the community, it's harder to push through sometimes, right? Even though it's required, it's harder to push through and prioritize. And so in our minds, if we can extend how much habitat it will provide access to, it kind of helps sway things. And it's, you know, I think on some sort of logical level, that watershed is close to our office. It's easy for us to interact with these homeowners. And, you know, once we start a project somewhere, it seems to steamroll on from neighbor to neighbor. And so a lot of it's just access for us. But yeah, I think we try and help with things like that.
Any other questions?
No, I just wanted to say, I think you all do great work. Thank you for what you do in the community, and hope to get out there for a volunteer day at some point. I've done one and it was really fun. So
Nice.
thank you.
Yep. Thank you all for
Thank you so
supporting us.
much.
Yeah.
Have a
We
good
need to
day.
make a motion. I don't.
It's not
Yeah.
on the agenda, is it?
Oh, well, do we need to make a motion? Yeah, I don't see, I
There
don't,
is a funding request, okay.
It's just on the agenda, was just the presentation.
yeah.
If we need a funding request, we'll submit it next time.
The funding is to approve funding of the amount of $20,000 for the Nooksack Family Enhancement Association to support Washington.
That was in your packet, and then we can do it.
I'll make a motion to approve, funding for the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association.
A second.
All those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Moving on to approving the professional service agreement with Electric Power Systems.
And that is Brian's, or, well, looks like Kurt's ready to talk about it.
Kurt will do that one.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm just here to request approval for a PSA for Electric Power Systems. They're the engineers who have been working on a fiber extension project for one of our facilities. The end goal being to have a hardwired connection to all of our between the plants, between our substations and all of our outlying facilities. So a hardwired connection is always going to be the most reliable. And EPS, Electric Power Systems, is the engineer who engineered the project that we're planning on doing this summer, which is an extension from our D station up into the Alcoa area to extend that out further. And the PSA expired, and we want to just keep them on board to all the way through the end of the project.
I have no questions.
I'll make a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Electric Power Systems.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you,
Thank you,
commissioners.
Commissioner.
Moving on to the operations report. I think that'll be
I'll-
you, Brian.
Yes, I'll take that one, commissioners. My remarks were really all centered around weather and weather variability and impact on our operations. But, at a high level, and I've mentioned this before, but what we're really seeing is the variable weather is really focused us, basically forced us towards a sort of another way of doing business, where as we move into this winter season, we're in sort of plan for the worst mode and hope for something less. But the variability in weather is forcing us in that direction. We can't take a chance that weather's going to be better. And so, there's a number of things that we're doing now that are different than we did in the past. One is that we're not relying on a single weather forecast. We're basically using 4 or 5 forecasts and kind of picking kernels out of each one of them to try to get a sense of what's going to happen. But it's clear that the forecast models are not dealing well with the variability. I mean, you can't count on a forecast that's more than 2 or 3 days out. And even then,
No, yeah.
what occurs could be a whole day off from when was forecast. So you're kind of in that mode. The other thing that we're doing, and I can give you a specific example in a minute, but in anticipation of bad weather, and by bad weather primarily that affects the river, we are reaching out to our suppliers, like suppliers of chemical, well in advance, and making sure that if we need more chemical, we can get it in the time to meet our need. So we're reaching out earlier to suppliers. The other thing, in terms of the cold weather coming up, this forecast for later this week, we're sort of ordering or leasing equipment. In this case, we're making sure that rental compressors are available when we need them to help with the air burst in case frazzle ice occurs. But back to the variability, one of the things that we've seen, and it really started the end of last year, is very flashy river. When we're talking about water operations, not only volume, but also turbidity. You will go through a very stable stretch. It's dry. And then all of a sudden, bam, we'll get a rain event. River flows will increase, turbidity will increase, and the staff, water operations staff, has to deal with that on a very short-term basis. So you'll get that spikes in turbidity, you'll battle it, and then it goes back down to normal. And one of the things that we noticed, in particular, the end of last year, if you remember, we had that first heavy snow event in the mountains, and then a fairly rapid warm up at elevation, and that snow melted, and it melted very quickly. And a lot of times in a snow melt situation, we don't see much of a turbidity spike. We get turbidity usually from soil runoff, basically surface runoff into the river. But this time we saw a spike in turbidity with the snow melt, and it was a very difficult material, suspended material, to deal with. And so the crew is really scrambling. And what we surmise what might have happened there is that what snow was there melted off, and we're back to digging into the glacier and bringing that glacial till material up and downstream. And the long and the short of it is we've used a lot more chemical already this year than we thought we were going to need. And in fact, to the point that, getting back to talking early to suppliers, Devin, our water supervisor, was worried that we were going to run out before the next scheduled delivery. So he had to contact the supplier and actually move up deliveries to make sure we had enough chemical to deal with the river. So it's a situation that seems to be getting worse each year, and we're dealing with it. As far as the upcoming cold weather, everybody, I'm sure on your mind as well, we're going to move into frazzle ice. The answer is we don't know. We're looking at some extremely cold nights coming up, starting. It looks like nature's going to flip the switch this Thursday. But the missing ingredient, at least in terms of the forecast, is we're not seeing a forecast of that cold northeast wind. And that really is usually the X factor in terms of frazzle ice. But it may show up, and we may hit that. But right now, the river's, temperature wise is almost 40 degrees. So we got to pull that temperature down quite a bit to get into frazzle ice. But yeah, it's weather is the game. On the electric side of the business, a little bit more fortunate. We're not obviously tied to river conditions, but what we see is with the higher winds, and we saw it this morning. I don't know if you noticed the lights flickered a little bit. We don't anticipate usually a major outage on our system, but we get hit by things that happen on Puget Sound Energy System, especially their distribution system. You'll get power quality issues where you'll see that flicker. You may have a voltage migration or an event that pulls down one of the phases on our system. And so anything that's sensitive, electronic devices, they may get dropped offline. The thing that we're most vulnerable to is our VFDs for our large motors. We have had instances where power quality will knock them offline and we have to reset. So reports just basically to tell you operations are doing their job, and we're in that winter weather mode. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Questions?
No questions from me, just a comment that, we all stay really focused on safety. 'Cause it's, on the roads and while we're working and, winter's just a hard time. So thanks to all the operators working hard, and stay warm.
Yeah, they make my job easy, starting when Kurt on down. They're the guys doing the heavy lifting, and they're the ones that have to be out there in the cold. So, and safety is our number one priority. So
Thank you,
Thanks,
Brian.
thank you.
Okay, moving on to commissioner reports. Who'd like to go first? Okay. Do you wanna-
Sure. So, yes, the last time we had a commissioner reports was in early December, but, I think I've really been focused a lot on geothermal with Chris. Going, like Chris said, going for it, I'm gonna be doing the testimony tomorrow morning for the Senate. So that for per diem requests. I also got an email from Alex Rammel about testifying Thursday morning too, which I haven't had time to communicate with Scott about, but I think that I could do that as well. And then Friday, I'll do the Waputa board meeting. Atul, are you planning to go down to Waputa?
Yes,
Can you cover the energy committee for me? Since you'll be there in person and I'm gonna be doing this testimony.
yeah.
Okay, I might have, yeah, that'd be great. Cause I know you're able to go to more of the Waputa meetings in person. And so if it's easier to absorb
Yeah, no
information
problem.
in person. Thank you. So I think those are my key three things. And then, yeah, really just the meeting with Lummy and Nooksack, and a lot of kind of conversations in between those meetings have been the key things that I'm up to. I continue to hear and communicate with Eric Hurst and about water use efficiency and water storage. And I think the two of us are going to try to talk to Troy Peterson, who's a professor at Wazoo, who works on agricultural water use efficiency. And,
I just got a call from Nicholas Garcia.
Yeah.
So they're gonna, Wapuda is gonna testify in favor tomorrow as well.
Okay, it doesn't hurt to have us all doing it though,
Right.
right? Yeah, okay, and then I'll forward Scott the email from Alex, because Alex was asking about this Thursday thing too.
Yeah, and Nicholas wanted to know about that too, because tomorrow is the companion bill, Alex's bill.
Okay,
It's the one from the Senate.
yeah,
Chris, I sent you the claim forms and I sent you the same.
Yeah,
The
that's fine.
oncology blast link.
Yeah, and at the bottom of my email to you, past my name, there's the actual link to the comment form. That'll get you back there. And then once you're on comment form, you can download the PDF yourself if you want. And that's something you can easily forward off to anybody who's interested.
Great. Just time go faster. Just a minute. My dog is waiting for me. That's like.
no, I'm not going to look, yeah, I'm going to get Zach.
Especially if you're standing outside.
Yeah.
If I get there too late, it's just like a week before.
Not sure that's a terrible thing.
No, he's like, he eats lunch and then he can make it like 15 minutes. He's out on sleep.
Have you guys adjourned yet, or are you just waiting?
How's
to
your
adjourn?
truck though?
Love it. I went,
Yeah.
we went over to Chelan 2 weeks ago and we went over to Blewett in Snoqualmie, and I have winter tires on, so it's a little less efficient. And so I had to stop, and I was able to identify a triple charge, a level 3 charger in North Bend. Had preconditioned the battery as I drove. I pulled in the Electrify American
Do it now?
20,
Okay.
about 20-30 minutes to get 30% more capacity on the
It's
battery.
11:05 somewhere, right?
So
Yeah.
it was great. Yeah.
It's 11:05. We are
Yeah.
just returning from executive session. No action was taken and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Good
it's.
job,
great.
President Arnett.